Hello people, this video is kind of a follow-up, in fact it is a follow-up to the battle for the souls of our children, and it relates to schools. Now a little time ago, obviously a lot of you know that I was taken by the police, kidnapped by the police. Some would call it arrest, but I make a big distinction because I'm not a criminal and they had no right to really take me. But because of the things I've been saying in some of my YouTube videos, they think that they can come and deprive me of my liberty, lock me in a cell, psychologically torture me by leaving the light on over the weekend so I couldn't really sleep, and then stripping me naked and doing stuff like this, ending up in the hospital. But I'm not trying to make myself out to be a victim. There's a lot of people who suffer more than I did over that weekend. I would say I'm slightly bruised and bumped around, but I'm resilient and I'll come back, and this video is not about that. The thing is this, I was going to make a video about those issues that happened to do with the police, and I still will, but something came about that has kind of trumped that, still to do with the police, and it's about the fact that police will be stationed in school. In this article we see that 20 police in Manchester will be stationed in schools across Manchester. Other articles talk about whether police are a force for good, and then there's this one that talks about a PC wanting police in every school. There's also this guide which people can download, and it's a very lovely looking guide. The design of the guide is beautiful, the colours are absolutely stunning. It gives you that kind of warm feeling when you look at these kind of corporate produced guides. You know, it's very inviting, should I say. And I think after reading something like this, you would want the police in your schools, and you'll be sending little Johnny and yeah, little Nathan off to school. Amanda and Shaniqua will be sent off to school, and you'll be sat at home having your morning tea, happy after doing the school run. But after experience the police that we have in this day and age, I want to pose a question as we go into this video about which kind of police do you want in your schools, and more importantly, what do you want them to be doing in your schools? Now, I say this because we have to look at society and we have to take off our blinkers when we think about society. And one of the things that is factual is that police do very little investigation these days. A lot of the things where police are taking people away, arresting them, is through informants, what we would call snitches. And in lesser affluent societies and communities, there's always families that are involved in criminal activity. I'm from Manchester and I know this very well. If you go to Liverpool, you know this very well. If you go to London, you know this very well. Any inner city, you will know this. But the children of those families should be afforded the right to go into school without being used, targeted, or marginalised because of their association with certain elements in their families and in their communities. Are we going to have the kind of policing where police are targeting young individuals, using young individuals as snitches, or profiling young individuals? And will the school to prison railroad network be enforced by these new elements within the police? That's just one area, and that's the lesser area, because I also have a list, and this is the list. I can't go through the list because it's, think about 28 pages long, and it's a list of the criminal convictions of the police, people within the police, and also other civil servants, public servants should we say, which the police are supposed to be. But I focused on the police in this list. It's a list that anybody can search for. I've got a few of these lists, and the lists are not exhaustive. You know, there's a lot of people that are not on this list, and there's also a lot of people that are in the police that haven't been found to be criminals yet. They're getting away with it. But as I say, this is a very worrying list, and I've focused, there's all kinds of crimes on this list, from fraud, rape, murder, you name it, it's on the list, committed by police officers. But I'm going to focus on some of the more worrying crimes, considering it's going to be inside schools. Because we don't expect fraud to be happening in schools, do we? Or do we? I don't know. But I'm going to focus on some of these crimes. But before I go into that, I want to show you some images of the police force that took me at the weekend. So let's go in and let's have a look.
What's your number? What's your number? You want money here? It's all
The young girl that was being hit and attacked by those two police officers was a young 14-year-old girl. Let's have a look at some more of Lancashire Police. Let's have a look. After the weekend, I know exactly how this fella felt after being restrained by police officers in a cell. And what I noticed about the police officers, that they kind of had this this kind of desire to be violent, this kind of bloodlust. It's very disconcerting to be on the end of it. But there's some behaviour by police that I've not been on the end of. And I want to show you this video. Now, before I show you this, the officer in this video is called PC Cook. Not been convicted, but I want you to pay close attention to what happens in this interesting video. 1 second.
That of the police officer is the one that you chucked out of my house when I was 15 and he had sex with me.
This one here?
No, the other one that was calling you mate, Terry Cook.
Really? Let's ask him.
He was 22, working at Radio Rentals.
Is it PC Cook?
Have you been advised?
Is it PC Cook? Is that
Have
who
you been advised?
I'm just asking you to identify yourself.
My collar number's on my shoulder.
Yeah, but are you PC Cook?
It doesn't matter what my name is.
Do you know this lady here?
Hello.
Hi.
From a long time ago, yes.
Do you remember me throwing you out of our house because she was underage and you were having sex
No,
with her?
I don't remember that.
Don't you?
No.
You should do.
No.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Where do you remember him from?
When I was 15.
15.
Have you been spoken
People
about
like
in
you
our
make
police
me
before?
sick.
Have you or not?
You're
Can
a
you answer my
nonce.
question or not?
You're a nonce.
Can you answer my
You're a
question
nonce.
or not?
I don't speak to one of the others.
Right,
I don't talk to you. You're a nonce. You're a nonce, Terry Cook. You dirty, dirty beast. Stay away from me. I threw him out of her house when she was 15 for having sex with her. He's
He was
a nonce.
22. Asking about your number.
So I'll answer you.
Yes.
No problem.
Just an allegation made about a PC Cook, about having sex with a 15-year-old girl. The girl was in the car, and I hope the audio was good enough for you to hear. It was a very interesting interaction. And obviously this person has not been convicted because everybody deserves their day in court. But the police have not rebutted this as yet. And therefore, this accusation stands. Because when the police come and take me for a YouTube video or send an email, and they treat me like a criminal, they treat me like I've got the sawn off, left in Moston with Simone. That's how they treated me. And I've not got a sawn off. But listen, don't look at me as a father. So, yeah, this guy would deserve his day in court. But I found the interaction quite awkward, didn't you? So anyway, that's not proven. Let's go to some stuff that is proven about our police officers. Let's go in. Here we see Lee Hatton, Officer Lee Hatton, who was on a UK programme called Body Cam Squad, one of those fake programmes that they have police rushing around arresting people on. This guy turned out to be a paedophile, convicted now. Here's the news story, or the news article. And maybe that isn't enough for you, so let's go to this story.
Gordon Anglesey has spent years denying he ever abused young boys. But today he arrived at court as a convicted paedophile.
Do you have anything to say to your victims, Mr. Anglesey?
A police officer for 34 years, the court heard Anglesey used his position to carry out sexual assaults on two boys aged 14 and 15 at the time during the 1980s.
Mr. Anglesey abused his position of trust as a senior police officer. He preyed on those he believed to be vulnerable, people he thought would not be believed in a court. Well, by its verdict, the jury did believe those victims, and Mr. Anglesey must now face the consequences of his actions.
One boy was abused in the showers of this former Home Office attendance centre for young offenders near Wrexham, which was run by Anglesey. The second boy was abused while a resident at what used to be the Bryn Allen Care Home. At the time, Anglesey was a police inspector, and in the witness box the complainant described him as evil. In police interview, he strongly denied the accusations.
I deny any sexual assault or sexually inappropriate behaviour. I have previously given my attendance at Bryn Ested. I have nothing further to say.
In the 1990s, Gordon Anglesey won £375,000 in libel damages after media organisations ran stories about his links to abuse. He was finally arrested 3 years ago after a National Crime Agency investigation into child abuse in North Wales.
Sentencing Gordon Anglesey to 12 years, the judge said, as a person whose obligation it was to uphold the law and to protect the vulnerable, your offences against these two boys grossly abused their trust in you. The consequences for them were life-changing.
Once a respected police officer, Gordon Anglesey has finally been exposed for what he really is.
We're getting deeper now, so I want to tell you a little story. When they locked me up last year for, again, a YouTube video, when they took me to Liverpool, I actually saw this person that I'm going to show you now, a police officer that had raped a 13-year-old girl, and I saw him when we were both on trial. So in the morning in prison, they would take the normal prisoners off in sweat boxes to the courts. The normal prisoners in the normal population were in a big room with open window. We'd all be in there in the morning getting our breakfast, and people were taking meds. And across the way we would see the sex offenders being brought into single cells. This Ian Naude is his name, police officer, he was on trial at the same time, would come in dressed up in an expensive suit, with an attitude like he'd done no wrong, being protected by the system on the sex offenders wing, away from the normal population. And it was really surreal, because when I'd spend a day in court and brought back and go into my cell and see on the television, this man would come up on the television, and it was surreal that the fact that I'd see him in the morning and then be seeing him on the television and I was in a cell, and know that this demon was in the same prison. Now, I want to show you a little bit, but I want to also tell you something about this guy. He used his position, as it's stated with this character, this chief of police. They use that power position that they have in order to abuse youngsters, to rape and to sexually assault youngsters. And everybody knows about the power that the police have. It comes with that uniform, and they embody this power. And the fact is that, well, let's go and have a look at this one. Let's have a look.
A police officer who only joined the force to gain the keys to a sweet shop has been jailed for raping a girl. Cheshire Constabulary PC in Naude, 30, met the 13-year-old after being called to her house over a domestic incident. He contacted her over social media and eventually raped her in his car, while filming it on his mobile phone. The committed paedophile was found guilty at Liverpool Crown Court of raping the teenager and jailed for 25 years. Naude, of Market Drayton in Shropshire, was also convicted of 4 charges of attempting to arrange the commission of a child sex offence and 1 charge of arranging a child sex offence, relating to 5 complainants aged between 12 and 15.
So this individual only joined the police force in order to gain the power he needed and access to vulnerable young people. Very clever individual, and this devilishly clever, and this individual was able to work within the police force, and the police force is supposed to be people that identify criminals, but they don't seem to be identifying criminals amongst their own ranks until crimes are committed, heinous crimes. Like, I'm sure the life of this 13-year-old was ruined because she saw somebody of authority come into her life who was supposed to be helping her and her family with something that was criminal, or, you know, in times of need that were victims. So I'd like to ask the question, now that I've shown you some of the police officers, is there any of these that you'd like in your schools? No? Shall I give you some more? Let's see if I can give you some more police officers that you can choose from to be in your schools. How about predatory Merseyside PC? A string of sexual assaults on duty. And his name? Christopher Hopkins, 41. What about child sex abuse officer Nick Linden? Rapist of children. Or what about this police officer? Would you like him in your schools? This one is called Alexander McCracken. He actually planned to have a baby so that he could rape, abuse and pass the child around to other paedophiles. This is a police officer, don't forget. And this is one of the police officers that might end up looking after your children in your school. But if you haven't had enough yet, what about this one? Former Bedfordshire police officer jailed for abusing girls. Or PC Nicholas Poole. He raped numerous young children, girls. Lots of indecent images online. Police officer. Former Merseyside cop groomed a vulnerable 12-year-old girl on Facebook and made her pose naked. Would you like that one in your school? Or what about former PCSO Peter Bunyan, jailed for rape? Would you like him in your school? He was found guilty of raping 2 young girls between the age of 3 and 5. What about this character? Disgraced cop for disgraced jailed cop, shocking cruelty to a young child. This individual was jailed for secretly filming up skirts of young girls, sacked by GM Greater Manchester Police. Female Met officer who had sex with rape victim in a McDonald's toilet. Or Jeffrey Lake, ex-policeman jailed for raping a child. Lancashire police officer convicted of possessing indecent images, PC Andrew Birch. What about Met Detective Chris Maitland, jailed for child sex offences? Child rapist. Or this fine upstanding police officer, would you like this one in your school? Craig Keane, Met police officer, admits sex with 9 individuals. Children under 13. What about Met officer jailed for raping teenage girl twice? PC Dean Roberts, 48, filmed himself raping a baby. This is a police officer raping a baby. PC raped 15-year-old girl who was high on solvents. Constable Adam Grice Roberts, 32. We've already seen this one. Lee Hatton, Staffordshire police officer, made relatively famous by a TV programme. What about this one? Sussex police inspector sacked over calls to prostitutes. Thames Valley police officer jailed for over child sex images. Or this weirdo police officer jailed after admitting having sex with schoolgirl. Good one to end on, because he wouldn't have very far to go if we chose him to go in our schools, would we? Having seen that, is there anybody that would feel safe having a police officer in a school with young children? I wouldn't. And I wouldn't feel safe if there was just one of these characters somewhere out there in the school. I wouldn't be one of the parents that said, well, you know, it's only a bad apple in an otherwise good force. No, it's not. You need to download the list. Look for the list. Find the list and look at it. And look at these depraved criminals. Some of them raping babies. They're the police officers that we have in our system now. They're the police officers that are policing us, our society. You know, I hear stories about so-called policemen who used to be bobbies on the beats, looking after children and this and that. Well, haven't things changed? But you see, all these stories don't come to the fore. You know, nobody really speaks about all this stuff that's happening. And I wonder why that is. Because we talk about paedophilia in Hollywood, we speak about Asian grooming gangs, we talk about priests, but we don't seem to focus on the ones who are supposed to be keeping us safe, protecting, serving and protecting is, I believe, what they're supposed to do. But they're not. They're serving themselves and they're raping our own children. Do I sound like an extremist? No, because the evidence is there for you to see. These are the people that walk around bigging up their chests in their Batman suits, taking people like me down to the police station for sending emails and making YouTube videos. Well, it's good that I can make YouTube videos because I really want to shock some people. And I want to ask you the question again. Do you want any of these devils in your school? Because what would happen when they go into school, these ones? They'd pass themselves off as upright citizens, upright public servants, lawful police officers. But what they would actually be doing is looking for the most vulnerable children in the school. You know, the most vulnerable ones. Then they would be using their power to silence those children while they did what? Abuse and rape the children. I'm trying to shock you, parents. I'm trying to make you feel terrible. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to make you think that you need to take your children out of these demonic schools. I keep saying it, but people keep thinking, oh, you know, I've got to go to work. You've got to take responsibility for your children because a new era is coming. This is not the old world that we used to have. This is the world post-COVID-19. That's the world we live in now. And the reason that they're putting these children in the schools is because we're entering into a police state where people are not supposed to be free. They're supposed to be controlled. And these children that are coming up, the most precious things that we have, who are coming up, are going to be controlled in a way that we would never, ever imagine. Do you want 25 years from now there to be lawsuits from the children that are being abused now by police officers to be fighting for justice 25 years from now? Or do you want to protect them now? I'll leave the ball in your court. ELAVI Truth TV signing out.